follow me. When have I ever led you wrong? There you are, Highway 101. Just look over that hill, Fillmore. One thing I can't stand is a smarty pants bear.
There's nothing here, Professor.
What do you mean there's nothing there? I can hear the cars.
Gosh, Professor, I told you there's nothing here.
Gee, where'd he go?
In the millennium of timelessness, cradled in the celestial meridian of the intergalactical outermost reaches of space, is a terrestrial attraction somewhere between Centaurus and Cassiopeia, known as the traffic zone. Our story deals with a crafty, cunning, calculating con man with the impossible name of Professor Waldo Wigglesworth, and who, as he meanders mischievously through the maze of Foggybog, Wisconsin, will suddenly find himself in the traffic zone.
Professor, are you sure this is a shortcut?
Of course, Fillmore. I've been through here many times, know every rock, bush, and tree. It's these holes full of water that I'm not sure about. Yes, sir, I know this swamp like I know my own hand. I figure we'll save at least 15 minutes by taking this shortcut.
But Waldo, I swear I've seen that tree before.
I told you I know every rock, bush, and tree. Hour of mischief! Hoppity, I want you to keep a sharp lookout for these mud holes. They're treacherous.
But that's the same hole you stepped into before.
Why, that's nonsense, Hoppity. That would mean that we've been walking around in circles. That hole does look a little familiar.
Doggone it, Professor. Now you're gone and got us lost.
Lost, you'll say. How could we be lost? All I have to do is consult the Professor Waldo Wigglesworth anti-magnetized underwater 14-jewel compass. I'm sorry, I forgot to wind it.
Then we really are lost.
Don't worry. Give me a moment to think and I'll have us out of here in a jiffy. I got it! We'll proceed due north, and in that way we'll hit Highway 101 and we'll follow it into town.
That's the highway we was on before we took your shortcut, Waldo.
Confound you, Fillmore. Have a little faith in me. Just follow me. When have I ever led you wrong? There you are, Highway 101. Just look over that hill, Fillmore. One thing I can't stand is a smarty pants bear.
There's nothing here, Professor.
What do you mean there's nothing there? I can hear the cars.
Gosh, Professor, I told you there's nothing here.
Gee, where'd he go?
Hoppity, my boy, I'm very much afraid Fillmore has gone into the traffic zone.
The traffic zone?
Yes, the traffic zone. That intergalactical millennium of timelessness that is somewhere between the intercosmic...
All right already!
Gee, that traffic zone isn't too good, is it?
Good, it's terrible. We've got to get him out of there before he gets hit by some kind of intergalactical bus.
Hey, it's solid, Uncle Waldo.
By George, all right, Hoppity.
So Hoppity and Waldo set about trying to break through the traffic zone.
All right, Hoppity, hold it right there. I think it's gone now. That's what I get for buying at a surplus store. These synthetics will never replace. Oh, mischief!
Gee, are you hurt, Uncle Waldo?
How could a half-ton charge of dynamite hurt anyone, Hoppity?
What should we try now, Uncle Waldo?
It's no use, Hoppity. There's no way for us to enter the traffic zone. Besides, I'm afraid that poor Fillmore...
You mean?
What Waldo means, Hoppity, is that Fillmore is caught in that intergalactical millennium of timelessness that is somewhere between the intercosmic celestial meridian known as the traffic zone.
Confound it, that's not what I meant at all. Fillmore is just in there waiting for the light to change, that's all.
Is Fillmore waiting for the light to change so he can cross the traffic zone? Tune in to our next episode and find out what a celestial meridian intergalactical is. If you already know, please tell us so we can write the next episode.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a little princess. Her father was a king, because that's how those things are. He loved his little princess, and so did all the people of the kingdom.
Huzzah for the little princess!
Huzzah?
Well, that's fairy tale for hooray!
Oh.
The little princess was very happy, and small wonder. She had everything and anything she wanted. Beautiful little jewels to wear, a lovely little garden to play in, a little mechanical horse to ride, even her own little castle to live in. All went well until one awful day when the princess began to grow. She grew, and she grew, and she grew. The people of the kingdom were greatly disturbed.
What's all the fuss? The little princess has grown.
So, all princesses grow.
Like that?
Oh.
The king was very upset,
My little girl's all grown up.
but he made the best of it.
Nothing will change. You're still my little girl. You'll have everything just as before.
So the king summoned the royal jeweler and ordered him to make some special jewelry. It was huge. He commanded the royal gardener to grow some special flowers. They were enormous. He ordered the royal engineer to make a special mechanical horse. It was tremendous. He even told the royal architect to build a special castle right next to his own. After all that, you'd think everything would be fine. But no.
No? No, Your Highness. We're broke. Broke? Shattered. There's not a pazooza left in the treasury. Jewelry, garden, horse, castle, in that order. They all add up to broke. Well, what do you suggest? To get some pazoozas. What else? Taxes.
And so the people of the kingdom were taxed and taxed and taxed. There was a tax on fences.
100 pickets, 100 pazoozas.
There was a tax on trash.
3 cans, 3 pazoozas.
On doors.
1 door, 1 paz. 2 doors, 2 pazoozas.
There was even a tax on smoke.
7 puffs.
I know, 7 pazoozas.
And a tax on children.
8, 9, 10, 10 and a half pazoozas.
As a result of the taxes, the people of the kingdom became angry. And you know who they blamed?
It's her fault.
Look at those jewels. Rocks from the mountains would have done.
Look at that horse. It must have cost 1,000,000 pazoozas a day to run that thing.
Small wonder we got high taxes.
Yeah, small wonder.
Why don't you get a job?
Yeah, you're big enough now.
Upon hearing this ridicule from the people who had once loved her, the princess became very sad.
Look at that.
We'll be flooded out.
You mark my word, next year we're going to have a tax on umbrellas.
In his castle nearby, the king was feeling very worried and sad and wet.
You know, she isn't the same happy princess.
So he summoned his royal cabinet for advice. The royal accountant, the royal lawyer, the royal writer, the royal efficiency expert, each of them gave their advice.
More taxes.
Tougher laws.
More publicity.
Get rid of her.
Get rid of her? But how?
Marry her off.
Brilliant. I shall give a golden slipper to the suitor who wins my daughter's hand. A golden slipper? Isn't that rather a small prize?
If it's one of her slippers, it's big enough.
So a proclamation was made throughout the kingdom, and one by one the suitors arrived at the castle to ask for the princess' hand. When they actually saw it, though, they soon changed their minds. The princess became sadder and sadder.
King, you got to do something. She'll wash out the crops.
So the king began to send the princess for long walks in the woods. One day, on one of her walks, she met a strange little man.
Hello, strange little man.
Hiya, princess.
Aren't you going to run away because I'm so big?
Of course not. Aren't you going to laugh because I'm so funny looking?
Of course not.
So they quickly became friends. Every day they would talk together about all kinds of things. They would laugh together. They even took long walks together. Then one day the princess said,
Perhaps you're an enchanted prince. Maybe if I kissed you, you would grow as big as I am.
Well, what do we got to lose?
So the princess kissed the funny-looking little man. He didn't change a bit.
I guess I'm, just not the enchanted type.
Ah, but something began to happen to the princess. She grew smaller and smaller and smaller until she was even smaller than the strange little man.
Oh, this is just the right size to me.
So the funny little man won the princess' hand, which was just the right size now. And he lived happily ever after, and she lived happily ever after, and the king lived happily ever after.
But what about the taxes? Yeah, what about the taxes?
Oh, don't be silly. We can't have everybody living happily ever after.
Hello out there, Peabody here, and that is my trusty boy, Sherman.
Hi.
Who will assist me in our next exciting adventure back into history.
Shall I set the Wayback Machine, Mr. Peabody?
Please do, Sherman, but I suggest you use both hands, for we are going way back with the way back this time, to the year 50,000 BC, to be exact.
50,000 BC?
That is correct, and the place will be Neanderthal, near Dusseldorf, where we shall meet the first caveman. Sherman and I entered the Wayback and were instantly whirled back in time to the period when the fourth glacial age was rising toward its maximum. But no sooner had we arrived than I immediately realized that something was amiss.
Mr. Peabody, we're moving. What's happening?
I think that if you will look down, Sherman, you will see that we happen to be on a very precarious perch. Which, now that I think about it, was probably the understatement of the year.
Yipe!
Well, at that moment, the great beast passed beneath a large tree. So instructing Sherman to follow my example, I grasped the nearest limb and we swung to safety.
Phew, that was a close one.
We then prepared to climb down from the tree, but we suddenly heard a strange sound.
Ugo, mift,
What's that?
Offhand, I would say that we are not alone in this tree.
Moop, nip, mif.
We're in luck, Sherman. There is the perfect example of Homo neanderthalensis.
You mean cavemen?
Well, obviously not cavemen after living in this tree. We were unable to understand what they were saying, but we watched them closely from our vantage point.
Ik het nun moved, ok het flap.
No, it splits up.
Age ik het nun moved.
Split vroeg niet. Nappa, let's cram room on top.
Shush.
What was that all about?
It would seem to indicate they realize there's a better way of life than living in a tree. Come, Sherman, we'll follow them and see what develops. And what developed was most interesting indeed, for in their first attempt to find a better place to live, they passed right by a perfectly good cave and squeezed under, of all things, a wet rock.
Zupnub, eknoep.
Niet nog, skruik mift.
Noek mogem zip bortzagnak.
Skreet, lit gram.
Once more, while passing the cave, they next tried a gopher hole, but the gopher objected, and those prehistoric gophers could be quite objectionable. In the next 2 hours, they tried to live in everything from bushes and brambles to stumps and hollow logs, but still didn't give the cave a second look. I used the Yang Na Indian hand signs in an attempt to explain the merits of living in a cave.
Ik nu kron niets.
Ook neem ik mift nog een cashew.
They still don't get it, Mr. Peabody. Maybe if I go into the cave, they'll get the idea.
No. But before I could stop him, Sherman was in the cave. But not for long.
Meow! Mr. Peabody, there's a saber-toothed tiger in that cave.
I noticed that, Sherman.
It's no wonder those two wouldn't go inside. Gee, they'll never become cavemen at this rate.
Yes, they will, Sherman. It's a simple matter of getting the saber-toothed tiger out so they can go in.
Simple?
Quite, Sherman. Come. Pulling up a very special bush that I'd happened to notice earlier, I tied it to one end of a long vine and instructed Sherman to tie a large round boulder to the other. Next, I tossed the bush into the cave and signaled to Sherman to roll the boulder down the hill. As it rolled, it pulled the bush after it. And, as I knew it would, the saber-toothed tiger bounded out of the cave, happily following the bush down the hill until he was lost from sight.
Hooray! You did it, Mr. Peabody. But how did you know the tiger would follow that bush?
Elementary, my dear Sherman. That bush happened to be Nepeta, or more commonly known as the catnip. The tiger, being all cat, found it impossible to resist. And now, being free to enter the cave, our two friends quickly did so and immediately set up light cave-keeping.
At last. They're now real cavemen, huh, Mr. Peabody?
Yes, and others were soon to follow their example. Soon everybody was living in caves. But this brought another problem that man had to face, the paying of taxes.
Taxes? Wow, that is a big problem.
Of course, Sherman. We all know that everything is big in taxes.
It never fails to amaze me how he can stand there and say such corny things with such a straight face.
Oogala soon fits.
As you'll remember, in our last episode, Fillmore had accidentally stumbled into the traffic zone. That terrestrial attraction somewhere between...
All right, already. We know what the traffic zone is. What we don't know is whether Fillmore is still in there or not.
Gee, what do we try now, Uncle Waldo?
It's no use, Hoppity. There's no way for us to enter the traffic zone. Besides, I'm afraid poor Fillmore... Did you hear that, Hoppity? Did you hear that? He's still alive! Fillmore, old buddy, we'll get you out! Just hold on, boy! No invisible wall's too strong to keep me out. Hold on, Hoppity, I think I've got him! There, I've got him, Hoppity!
What you've got there, Uncle Waldo, is a giant turnip.
Hiya, Waldo. The Hoppity.
Who said that? Who said that?
Me, Fillmore.
You are not Fillmore. You are a giant turnip. Giant turnip, what have you done with my Fillmore?
But I am Fillmore. Listen.
Out of mischief, Fillmore's turned into a turnip. Where else could this happen but in the traffic zone?
At any rate, Waldo, Hoppity, and Fillmore, the giant turnip, proceeded into town.
Run for your lives! It's the giant turnip from outer space! Where is everybody? The town looks deserted.
The people of Foggy Bog were afraid to go outdoors because of possibly meeting the giant turnip.
Pardon me.
Well, Fillmore, I guess we've got to start thinking about your future.
How come?
Well, the big brown bear bit's all over, obviously. You must face life as a giant turnip now.
But I still feel like a bear.
But let's face it, you look like a giant turnip, and nobody loves a turnip.
I think turnips with brown sugar and butter are great.
Hoppity, do I talk to you about frog's legs?
It's the giant turnip!
The people of Foggy Bog decided to take action, thinking that they had been invaded by a turnip from outer space.
A giant turnip, Mr. President. Yeah, with arms and legs. That's right. Yes. It's carrying a bugle. Well, I don't know, sir. It probably uses it to call in more turnips. Don't you think this is a job for the federal troops? You're going to send the Secretary of Agriculture. I see. More in his line of work. Yes, sir. Goodbye, Mr. President.
Meanwhile, the people of Foggy Bog decided to take matters into their own hands.
I say we attack it with B-40s.
I say we use flamethrowers.
I say we surround it with a squadron tanks.
But what harm has it done?
What's it done? It's a turnip from outer space. That's what it is. Would you let your sister marry a turnip from outer space?
I think I have a solution to the problem.
What's that?
We plant it.
Plant it?
Yes, plant it, and the town of Foggy Bog will become famous for growing 18-foot turnips.
By George, Fred, you've got something there. Men, take up your spades.
Waldo.
It's an interesting group. They're all carrying spades, rakes, watering cans.
Looks as though they're thinking of planting something.
Yeah, me. Come on, Waldo. You got to get me back to the traffic zone.
There he is, man!
Open up, traffic zone. Come on, open up.
Will Fillmore be able to re-enter the traffic zone before the townspeople plant him? Tune into our next episode, The Vegetarians, or Plant Me Now, I'll Dig You Later.
For those of you who went from grammar school right into college, here's Mr. Know-It-All.
Hello, hi, jumpers. Today's discourse is provocatively entitled How to Run the 4-Minute Mile in 10 Seconds. The 4-minute miler should arise at dawn, eat a hearty breakfast, and go back to bed. Howsoever, if you happen to sleep in a Murphy bed, and Murphy is a night watchman who demands his bed back in the daytime, then you must train elsewhere. And the best place for a train, of course, is a railroad terminus or depot. Here, the neophyte miler has the opportunity of running on an Olympic-sized track. Of course, there is always the hazard that the Olympic special is also running that day. Last but most certainly least, you must have that final burst of speed at the wire. This can be procured at a Finnish steam room. You take a steam bath, then tell them you cannot pay for it. A Finnish attendant will then boot you out. This is what is known as a finishing kick. At last, the day of the race is at hand, and there you are, ready to win the cup. The race is on, and you discover that you are not only running dead last, but that you are doing it in the Indianapolis auto race. But you win anyway, and in record time.
Well, I don't get it, Mr. Know-It-All. How were you able to win the race?
I know the judge.
Well, folks, it's...
Hoppity, haven't you forgotten something?
Oh, yeah, wait a minute. And now, here are some scenes from our next show.
There, did you hear that? We found the pedestrian crossing.
How do you know, Uncle Waldo?
I heard the traffic signal.
Well, come on, let's go.
We can't, Hoppity. We'll have to wait for the signal to turn green. It says walk now. Let's go.
Gee, so this is the traffic zone.
It's kind of eerie, isn't it? Say, Hoppity, you're starting to look a little funny.
Well, gee, you're starting to look a little funny yourself, Uncle Waldo.